Hello, everyone, and welcome to Thoughts and Coffee. My name is Sarah Barnes-Humphrey. I'm the founder and host of Let's Talk Supply Chain, the Blended podcast, and the founder of the Blended Pledge. Now, before we get started, we just want to take a moment to thank all the veterans in our community and beyond. Your service and sacrifice inspire us every day, and we are so grateful for you. Now, we have a great show for you. We've got Jason coming up from OneRail. But before we do that, we've got a lot to talk about. So first of all, I want to give a shout out to the Secret Society of Supply Chain. It's our free membership group for all of you. We're creating a community. So head over to secretsocietyofsupplychain.com to get your membership today. We also have Women in Supply Chain Connections. And I want to give a shout out to our newest Secret Society of Supply Chain members. That's Susan Harrison. We've got Kevin Higgins, Samira Alhoni, and Jessica O'Kane. Welcome to the community. Now, for anybody who's listening right now, please let us know where you are tuning in from. Put it in the comments. We'd love to know. And then obviously, if you love our conversation today, we want to see some fire emojis. We love fire emojis here at Let's Talk Supply Chain. So make sure to put those in the comments and we'll give you a bit of a shout out. All right. So first, we are going to get to our newest episodes. Now, congratulations to Let's Talk Supply Chain and all of our team, because we hit 500 episodes last week, and we did it with a Woman in Supply Chain episode with featuring Angela Woody. So go and check that out. We talk about all about her career journey, what that's been like in supply chain. So wherever you listen and watch the episode, Let's Talk Supply Chain on YouTube or over on Apple and Spotify, go check out that episode. We've also got episode 501 that came out last week as well, or this week. Uncover hidden inefficiencies and opportunities with Pallet Alliance. Now, if you missed our live stream a couple of weeks ago, pallets are a key part of your supply chain strategy. So head on over, listen to this episode, because if you haven't thought about your pallets in a while, I would highly recommend you go and check out what they have on offer to keep your supply chains moving. All right, we've got some events coming up live tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern. I hope you're going to join me for this one. This is going to be fun. We're going to be talking to OptiLogic. We're also going to be talking to Diana from Cencora, and we're going to be talking about scaling supply chain decisions, what that looked like for Diana and her team, the challenges that she went through, the solutions that she was able to put in place, and what does that mean for her supply chains today. So click the attend button, even if you can't attend live, and we will send you that link. All right, Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern, Eric Johnson is going live for TPM today, and he's talking about goodbye truckload RFPs. Hello, smarter freight buying. I mean, who doesn't want to say goodbye to RFPs? So I'm going to be tuning into that one. I hope that you click the attend button and join us on Friday. And then next week, we've got a brand new show that is starting, hosted by Chris Hamley, and it's called The Performance Paradox, a roadmap for supply chain operations to suck less. I mean, who doesn't want that? That's happening at 2 p.m. next Wednesday. So click the attend button and join us for this new live show. And then, of course, we've got our in-person conferences. Katie Date and I are going to be doing a workshop next Thursday at the Woman in Supply Chain Forum, and we hope to see you there. I'm also going to be doing a book signing. I'm going to have some books available for purchase, and we're going to be doing a Woman in Supply Chain dinner that night as well. And then, of course, in February, we've got Manifest in Vegas. That's February 9th through 11th. It's where all the connections are going to be seen in supply chain. So go and check that out and register today. And last week, I don't know if you caught this, but I was in Paris for Thoughts and Coffee. And the reason I was there was for Visibility Now with Shipio. Go and check this out. We did a live from on-site with all of the interviews that I did with companies like Vita Coco. We had Toyota, and we got some really great insights on this one. So go and check that out. The link is in the comments right now for you to go and look at that, or it's on the Let's Talk Supply Chain YouTube page. Last but not least, we've got two more things to tell you about. I've got a brand new monthly pop. This is my LinkedIn newsletter. I think it only just came out this morning, and we're talking about the book that went #1 on Amazon last week. So go and check that out. The link is in the comments. And then, of course, Blended Pledge. Now, this is the nonprofit. We give away grants to cover travel expenses so that diverse voices can say yes to speaking engagements. We have opened up nominations. We are looking for volunteers for a certain couple of spots that we have open. I think it's only open for another week or so. So please go and check that out. And we'd love to see you volunteer for us or with us and the team that we've already built. So go check that out. The link is in the comments. I hope to see your application because we've got a lot of great people on the team. We'd love to have you as well. All right. Now it is time to bring up our guest for today. Jason, are you ready for this? Good morning. How are you?
Hey, good morning, Sarah. Good to be with you.
Great to see you.
Nice to start a Tuesday with a fellow Canadian.
Right? And we got our first fire emoji. I don't know who it's from because it says LinkedIn user, but we got our first fire emoji. So whatever I was talking about at the top of the show, it's only going to get better. All right. So for anybody who doesn't know who you are, tell them who you are, what you do, and a little bit about OneRail.
Sure. So I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at OneRail. Joined OneRail earlier this year, and we help enterprises really optimize their last mile operations using AI and real-time decisioning to orchestrate everything from internal fleets to third-party couriers or a combination of both, ultimately so that our customers can deliver reliably and scale efficiently. So I always like to say, in a nutshell, we solve one of the hardest problems in supply chain today, which is how to deliver reliably at scale when demand, capacity, and a flurry of external conditions are constantly changing.
Yeah, and with all sorts of innovation and fun. I have worked with OneRail on a number of different occasions in a number of different ways, and we're always having a good time talking about last mile. You're always so focused on security and risk management, research, innovation, and it's one of the things that I really, really enjoy about working with OneRail. So I'm super excited for you to be here, and we've got a lot to talk about today. But first, I know we usually go into the poll, but we created this fun post the other day, and I thought it would be fun to find out what sign Jason is. So what's your sign, Jason?
I'm a Taurus.
All right, let's go find that. So Taurus, the reliable supplier, stable, steady, loyal, but don't you dare change the ERP system. You'll still be using Excel in 2040. How accurate is this, Jason?
That's incredibly accurate. So funny.
That is so funny. Well, I hope everybody goes and checks it out. I'd love to hear from you as to which one is your horoscope. Now, for me, my birthday is on Thursday, and so I am a Scorpio. And so it says the strategic negotiator, mysterious, intense. Your poker face in supplier meetings is a supply chain weapon. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that because I don't really have a poker face. I'm going to be honest. I kind of wear my heart on my sleeve and everybody kind of knows what I'm thinking just from my eyes. So I don't know how accurate that is, but we'll go with it. We'll go with it. If there's any other Scorpios in the audience, I want to hear from you because I want to know if that's accurate. All right, let's get into our poll of the week. Now, we'll ask everybody a question every single Wednesday morning on our Let's Talk Supply Chain LinkedIn page. Now, the question is, how confident are you that your supply chain partners follow the same data security standards your company does? Now, we had about 44 votes on this one, and I thought we were going to have a lot more votes. However, this indicates to me that most people who saw this poll didn't really know how to answer and wasn't sure whether they should or not. So 43% of you said somewhat confident, 39% of you said not very confident, and then we had a tie. 9% said very confident and 9% said completely unsure. And this is why I think we had a lower voting this time. Jason, what do you think about this one?
I'm shocked.
Right.
Yeah, the idea that, what's somewhat confident, not very confident, that's just a tremendous amount of folks who are relying on partners where they don't have the same confidence as they do in their own security standards. I'm surprised.
Yeah.
I would think you'd be holding your partners, as if not more accountable than you're holding your own enterprise from a security perspective. So, got to say, totally floored.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later on in the show. And the reason why we decided to ask this question, especially having you on the show, knowing what we were going to talk about today in and around the AWS outage. And actually, this is even, I think, more serious than even cybersecurity threats, or at least equal. Right, Jason?
Yeah, I think it's at least equal. Any disruption, certainly in the supply chain, regardless of what the root cause is, I think has to be taken equally seriously. So yeah, I
Yeah.
would say equally for sure.
Well, and I think the interesting thing to note too is that we talk about how we want more collaboration. We want less silos. We want more collaboration. And part of that is data sharing. And part of that is the infrastructure that not only businesses and supply chain are curating themselves and their tech stacks, but then also who they're relying on as far as vendors and partners to be able to integrate so that that information is free flowing. But there's another layer to that in the fact that we really need to double down on what security looks like within that environment, within all of those partners who are connected, and what are the sort of the non-negotiables, right?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. It's, any one enterprise is dealing with a web of partners out there in their own individual ecosystem. And so I think that's where we have to start holding everybody accountable to some level, standard that's consistent across the board, so that ultimately you can go to market knowing that across that ecosystem you've got similar security standards. So
Yeah. Well, also now's the time of the show that I usually ask for a bit of a market update. So, Jason, what are you hearing? What are you hearing from the market? What are people thinking about? What are they worried about? I know we're fully into Q4 at this point. We're sort of looking down the end of the year, but then also looking at into 2026. There's a lot of preparations going on for that. So, what are you hearing? What are you seeing? Talk to us about that.
sure. Especially as folks are starting to think about what their strategic initiatives are going to be for 2026, and are starting to, go through budgeting cycles to fund that work. We're definitely starting to hear folks thinking about delivery as a growth engine. So, where historically delivery has been, thought of as logistics, or something that just happens, or something someone else in some other department takes care of. Delivery as a growth engine is definitely starting to make it to the boardroom. And I think it's been there for a little while, but the momentum that it's gaining is pretty tremendous right now. So, I spent, before joining OneRail and spending a few years in enterprise technology focused on supply chain, I spent about 25 years of my career on the industry side as a retailer. And when I think back to what we used to think of as end-to-end supply chain, the supply chain ended, on a shelf or a slotting location in a DC,
Right.
or on a shelf at a retailer in a store at a mall. That was the end of the supply chain. Promise fulfilled, right? And it's so different than that now. The end of the supply chain is the customer's doorstep.
Mhm.
And so it's just exciting to see last mile start to gain so much momentum, like I said, in boardrooms, because really the doorstep is the moment of truth with the customer in my mind. And ultimately that's where the brand value is either realized or eroded. And folks are certainly starting to think about that, take it seriously, and it's getting a lot of investment as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, if you want to find out more about OneRail throughout this discussion, we've got a QR code in the top right. Go and click that. That'll take you to their website so you can learn a little bit more. And I appreciate that. I mean, it's right. And we're talking about delivery to doorstep. And I even had a conversation, I think, earlier on this year, and it was like delivery into the change room, which was one of the retailers were thinking about and talking about how they were going to make that happen. And so it really is interesting. And another part of that, I want to throw this in there with our first article, is actually space delivery. And I think it's interesting because We talk about last mile delivery in a variety of different ways. And this one actually talks about how they are thinking about last mile delivery from space to Earth. And one of the interesting things was that they can deliver to Earth within an hour. So everybody, the Amazon effect has now moved its way into space. Jason, what did you think about this article?
I love this article. First of all, I'm a bit of a space nerd, so I enjoyed reading it and thinking about the different applications. Interestingly, the first thing that popped into my mind as an aside was you saw the Hunger Games movies.
Yeah.
Remember when they're like in the game and the tributes get the things that come from the viewers and send them? That was like the first thing I thought of. But anyhow, it's unbelievable that that our ambitions from a logistics perspective have now expanded beyond Earth. And what I think about is ultimately is that I'm not sure customers right now are asking for spacecraft delivery, but what they're definitely asking for is for certainty. And that's one of the things I loved about this article, because it really highlights the importance of speed and optionality, and and as everyone, different retailers and distributors have had to follow the Amazon effect, we're undoubtedly going to have to follow this effect at some point in time. And so to imagine what that translates to on Earth, and the flexible capacity that's going to be required and the real-time responsiveness that's going to be required, I think is pretty interesting. So it was a fun article. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I really liked it. What they were talking about is how they can move 500 pounds of cargo from orbit to Earth in less than an hour. But what they're talking about it as, they talk about it as a flagship spacecraft, but then they also say that they're building a logistics platform. So I was like, I don't know if the people who are building this, I think the company is called ARC, if they have a supply chain background or not. So it'd be interesting to see how they determine a logistics platform. So are they building the craft itself, or are they also building this platform that can also enable, deliveries and logistics to and from Earth to space or back again?
Good opportunity for OneRail to collaborate with ARC. The other thing I liked about the article was they were talking about how they could hold cargo in space orbiting for 4 to 5 years.
Yes.
Until needed, which I thought was interesting because, in supply chain, from an earthly perspective, we talk about pre-positioning inventory as forward in the supply chain as possible. So now we can pre-position inventory in space.
For 5 years.
Right.
And then they were like, we can bring the cargo down on command and it's precise landing. They talked about it being reusable, which is really cool.
Cool.
But realistically, they also said at the end of the article that the first mission is not till 2026. So I think we are all waiting with bated breath to see how this goes and what that actually looks like. Because it sounds cool. I mean, right now they're looking to deliver, I think, medical kits and drones. I don't know why medical kits would be in orbit and then needed on Earth. Wouldn't they leave Earth to go to? Anyways, I have questions. I have lots and lots of questions from this article, but I thought it was really interesting in the fact that we're talking about last mile delivery today. We're talking about innovation. We're talking about security. We're talking about interconnected networks. And now we have to think about potentially space down the road and how we're going to interconnect that into what we're doing in supply chain. All right, let's get to this article because we named this show after this article. Your team did a great job on this, by the way, because I think that as supply chains are getting more connected, as we need to take a look at the infrastructure, not only internally, but externally, and who we're working with, this is becoming extremely more important. And we talked about this a little bit earlier on in the show. And I remember on this day, I was watching Good Morning America, and Robin was talking about how she couldn't play Angry Birds because of the AWS outage. That was one of the ones that was affected. And so it was interesting to listen and see who was affected and how they were affected and why. So talk to us about this article. Why did you write it? Why is it so important to point this out? What is about it that we need to talk about today?
Sure. Again, I'm going to go back to my retail industry experience for a quick moment, and I'm thinking back to, as a C-suite member of one particular retailer. We went through multiple days of simulating a data breach. And when I think back, I shudder to think back to that experience, because of the extent to which it breaks trust with your customers and the extent to which it immobilizes an entire organization until it's been solved and ultimately rectified. So, it's really not a risk you can afford to take in the near term, from a customer perspective, or in the long term because of the implications that a data breach or security breach could have on your company. So, like I said, it makes me shudder to think of the near term and long term impacts of a breach or an outage. And I think what this really served to highlight was, to remind folks in the supply chain that it doesn't have to be a security breach to cause mass disruption. This is a digital service continuity problem in my mind. And if your brand or if your platform goes dark, it's your brand that's going to absorb that cost. So I think that's why, not I think, I know that's ultimately why we built OneRail with a few different things to help. First of all, layered redundancy. We've got multi-carrier orchestration, and then our ISO certifications from a security perspective are just a tremendous asset as we go to market, because it from the minute one instills so much trust in our customers and prospects. So listen, you at the end of the day, you can't scale your last mile without systems that you can trust under stress. And I think we all got a bit of a wake-up call with this AWS outage.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier in the program, the extent to which we all have and manage and are responsible for webs of data exchange, we've got to be holding folks accountable to the highest level standards. And
Yeah.
otherwise, unfortunately, we just saw just what can happen.
Yeah.
Thankfully, it was a relatively short outage, and it was fixed relatively quickly. But imagine something like that happens and it's not an easy DNS fix, right?
Yeah.
That can go on for days.
Well, and the loss that they reported, or that you reported in this article, was, I think, just over 581 million. Now, that is the loss in dollars. However, there's a lot of other risks and things that happen that we might not even think about. And one of the things that jumped out at me was the SLA violations.
Mhm.
So when we're working with other companies, this happens to me, this happens with everybody's companies. If we're working with partners, if we're working with vendors, there's usually an SLA in place that talks about data and securing the data and data privacy and what happens and who's responsible. And these violations can come with some really hefty fines. And we don't really think about it, right? Because a violation could be that you're in a platform on an unsecure Wi-Fi network,
Mhm.
right? And people are doing that all the time because we're traveling and we're doing all sorts of different things. And so it's just a couple of things to think about in the fact that not only this outage caused a lot of SLA violations, it can happen in everyday life as well. And so I think when you use the word trust, that is a word that I've been talking about in almost every single tech conversation that I have had, and I have a lot. And I think, you talking about this ISO around secure, what is it? So I want to say congratulations, because you have an ISO, you're the recognized standard around, I think it's security. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
The information security?
Yes. Yeah.
Awesome. And that's important for a number of different reasons, because we talk about trust. So how do you get instant trust with not only your customer, but also the team that's going to use the platform?
Right.
We talk about implementation of softwares and technology. trust is going to be the thing that is probably going to take the longest in ensuring that those teams that are using the platform trust the information, trust the data, trust the solutions that are coming out of it. And so this really brings to the forefront how important that is, but also it brings to the forefront how important questions like, how much do you know about your partners and vendors' infrastructure? And how do you know whether to trust everyone? Jason?
Yeah, you can't really know off the bat. One of the interesting things about having sat on both sides of the table, as a technology provider and as a retail industry, leader within supply chain, you can look for the leading indicators that you're entering into a trusting relationship. Certainly there are things like our ISO certifications that are ultimately a badge to enter into the relationship with, that gives you instant credibility. And the team at OneRail has worked super hard to achieve those certifications. But it's really not until it's boots on the ground, you're starting to deploy a solution, starting to engage in the change management with having a solution adopted, until that's really where you start to see the early indications of the extent to which you can trust a relationship. And I think that's why so many organizations put so much time and effort into upfront agreements, right? Master services agreements and order forms, because it at least establishes the rules of the road.
Yeah,
Knowing
non-negotiables.
non-negotiables, and accounting for the things you can't foresee at that point in time. And I always think that's good. And I always like to think that it's good. It's always nice to sign an MSA and an order form, and I always like to think about it as, let's sign it, let's agree on the rules of the road, but let's put it in a drawer and enter into the relationship with all the trust in the world, and
Yeah, and eyes wide open.
And eyes wide open. Yeah.
Yeah.
But and you have to have that perspective, because at the end of the day, when you're an enterprise technology provider and you're partnering with folks who have customers on the other end of the equation for them, they're entrusting you with fulfilling every promise they make to their customers, and we've got to take that seriously. And
Absolutely.
we certainly do at OneRail.
Well, I appreciate you for talking to us about that article. There's a couple of examples in there, so head over to the article to find out a little bit more about United National Foods and Muji. There's some examples about infrastructure and cybersecurity and all that kind of stuff. So go check that out. Plus, remember to get the QR code, because we're only about a minute and a half away from ending the show. Grab the QR code, go and check out a little bit more about OneRail. I want to give a shout out to Waleed. Thank you so much for joining me, and Leah Kim from Seattle, Washington, joining us over on my personal LinkedIn. Thanks so much for the shout out and the happy birthday messages. Last but not least, we have a very quick article. We're not going to get too much into it just because of time, but I wanted to bring this to the forefront because General Mills is investing $54 million in an innovation hub for the next generation of products. Now, this is B2C. This is talking about innovation and research around consumer products. But the reason why I bring this up is because I've been talking a lot about testing and pilots when it comes to supply chain technology. And I think it's important that we take a look at what's happening in B2C and we think about what's possible in B2B around research and innovation. I know OneRail is very much about research and innovation and making sure that there's testing and pilots and that it works for everybody. So Jason, real quick, we've got about 30 seconds. What did you think about this article?
I love this article. Like you mentioned, Sarah, research and innovation is at the heart of everything that we do at OneRail. And so, it was easy to relate to the article, certainly, and to understand what General Mills is trying to do. And, in terms of thinking about how it impacts the supply chain, you're going to need delivery models that are going to flex, anytime you're starting to innovate in products. So it was a neat article. Like I said, something that we can certainly relate to.
Yeah. Yeah. So highly recommend you go and check it out. It'll give you some ideas of what you can do within your B2B environment. Jason, thank you so much for joining me here on the show. And I want to give a shout out to everybody who was watching and listening. Thanks so much for joining us this week. Next week's going to be a great show as well. So I can't wait to see you back here next Tuesday at 10 a.m. Eastern for Thoughts and Coffee. Jason, thanks again for joining me today.
Thanks, Sarah. My pleasure. Have a happy birthday.
Thank you.